Hi, everyone. It's Mama Deb, and we are here to get real about mental health. Before I get started on tonight's topic, which is boundaries, I just want to give everybody a few minutes to get in here. Um, so I totally enjoyed a extra day off this today. I didn't have to go to work today. And it's a good thing because it's the last decent day that we are going to have here in Oregon. Decent, I mean, like it was only 72. And next week, we're all up in the 90s. And those of us who live in Oregon are not ready for the 90s. I'm sure some of you out there, excuse me, who live in Oregon know exactly what I'm talking about because when it gets to be 90 here, it's sweltering and it is humid as F. And we just sit there and sweat and try to look as attractive as possible. Just kidding. Anyway, so tonight we are going to talk about boundaries, why we set them, why we need them, and how they make our lives better once we do decide to set them. And it's super important, hi HR, that we do this for ourselves because setting boundaries really makes sure that you are in a safe place mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it also encourages stability within your life. And I think that's one of the things that's the most important is that with those of us who suffer from mental health disorders, we often lack the stability that life can sometimes get away from us when we have different. Hi everyone. When we have different things going on in our life, when our mental health tends to suffer, we start to lack that stability. So boundaries are very important for those of us who have these issues because we have to be able to be true to ourselves and protect ourselves in any type of situation. So when we're talking about setting boundaries, they could be set in any one of many different areas in our lives. They could be physical, emotional, time constraints, sexual, intellectual, or material. And when you think about that, those are all the areas in which if you're talking about a relationship, a long-term relationship, all of those things they tie into that relationship. And when we're talking about having physical boundaries, which is the one that I have to explain the most because everything else kind of just comes in line. But physical boundaries include the need for personal space. Okay. When you're having an argument or you're in a situation where you can't deal with the situation, you have the right to ask for personal space. You have the right to say that I'm not comfortable with you touching me like that, or I need you to hug me. You have the right to say all of those things. Hi, everybody. And also, physical needs, you guys have to remember sometimes you have to say, I need to eat, I need to drink, I need to rest, I need to take care of myself. That is an absolutely a physical need that we have, and it's a boundary that we have to set with other people who do not understand what's going on with what's going on with our mental health. Even if your partners, you guys, I've been married for 21 years, and sometimes my partner has to come to me and go, what's going on? And I have to tell him what's going on because he doesn't know everything. We have our boundaries pretty much, kind of locked up at this point in our marriage, but those boundaries will change as our marriage changes, as the years progress. So I need you to really understand that this is not just a set in stone thing. It is something that will change throughout your relationships and throughout your life. So how do we set boundaries? The first thing that you have to do is you have to understand why. Why do we need boundaries? And boundaries are set specifically to protect ourselves from emotional and physical and mental harm and the destabilizing of ourselves and our own little world. Okay. So when you're in a relationship, of course, you're going to be sitting on there's two of us in the relationship, everything like that. But what's important to remember is that even in a relationship, there still has to be an I. There still has to be an I. There still has to be a me or a you. And we can come together and be we, but I still have to protect I. And it's not selfish. It's not asking too much. It's absolutely asking to be healthy and to be independent and strong. And anybody that you have for a partner that's worth their salt is going to say, absolutely, I support you in being safe and strong in who you are. Because if you're happy and you're in a safe place, then you and I together will make a much stronger we. So when you understand why that needs to be, you need to decide, what am I going to do? I'm going to do this. I'm going to make these boundaries. Then you need to examine in what areas in your life they need to be in. So we talked about that. The areas of your life where you can absolutely need to have boundaries set are physical, emotional, time management, sexual, intellectual, and material. Those are the areas in which you might need to have boundaries set. Now, just because you have the need to set boundaries in one area doesn't mean you're going to have them in all areas. It is the area that you need to feel your most stable and your most complete self. That's what's important to remember here. So once we decide that we need them, we're going to examine that we need them. And once we set up those boundaries, it is so important to keep the boundaries. Don't let people talk you out of it, because that's something that they will try to do. And we'll get into that a little bit later on. But just know that you have to keep these boundaries. And it's important to note the next thing is to take it slow. Don't set this huge boundary, about here, okay, here, when you should be setting one here, okay? Because getting used to setting boundaries is a difficult thing, because you're used to probably being ran over or doing whatever it takes to keep other people happy, because a lot of us are people pleasers, or being told, well, you're overreacting, you're not handling this correctly. In actuality, you are handling it correctly, but there's no way to confirm that until you start setting those boundaries. So remember to start slow, but make sure that you keep your boundaries and stay strong in what you need for yourself. Next thing is we need to set reasonable consequences. And when I say reasonable, I mean, I understand that when you're in a relationship, a work relationship, a personal relationship, whatever the relationship may be, a friendship, sometimes you get angry and you're like, I'm effing done with this person. I want a divorce. I want out of this friendship. I want all of that, right? Well, no, let's be honest. Let's not speak from a place of anger. We have to remember, that's the next one that we're talk about, is that our boundaries have to come from a place of respect for ourselves. So a consequence comes from a place of respect for ourselves and for the person that we're in that relationship with. So, for example, you don't want to, somebody does something very trivial and it's very low on it's not even actually up to your boundary, but you're going to get upset about it. You don't want to F that person off, if they've been friends with you for a long time or what have you. You want to make sure that you're respecting them as a person as much as you want your lines to be respected. You have to respect their lines as well. And again, stick to the boundary. Absolutely stick to the boundary. And then you have to communicate those boundaries. When you start to have trying situations with your relationships and everything, hey, baby, you have to start by saying that this is what I need. Because when we come across with I statements, it's really hard to argue those I statements or I feel. You can't argue with the way somebody else feels, okay? Because you don't know what they're feeling. So I feel I need this for me. They can't argue that with you because they're not you. They're not looking at things through your eyes. But if they love you and they're friendly with you or whatever the case may be, they're going to respect you coming to them and saying, I need to set some boundaries here because I need to feel more respected and I need to respect myself more. And the last step to setting those boundaries is use your common sense. Use your common sense to set those boundaries, okay? If you're not comfortable setting a boundary this big, then don't. But this much is not enough. Then find your happy medium, you guys. Find whatever works for you. Use your common sense and tell people, this is what I need. This is what I need to have happen. This is how important it is to me that I feel this way in our relationship. And again, the I feel statements are super hard to argue with. And we'll talk about the gaslighting here, Farron, in a short bit, because that's absolutely something that we need to talk about. So signs and symptoms that somebody is crossing your boundary when it shouldn't be crossed. You guys are all going to know these feelings. Anger, resentment, guilt. Those feelings start coming up, and you're going to realize that even though you didn't realize it in the moment, when you look back on it, you're going to see that these people did cross your boundary. And you need to make, like I said, you need to act like you're in charge, and you don't back down, and you say that to them, hey, listen, I communicated with you that I had this boundary, and you crossed this boundary, and it's making me feel very angry and very resentment, a lot of resentment towards you. Now, the people could probably say something like, I didn't understand that you really meant that. Or my all-time favorite, I was just joking. You don't know how to take a joke. Okay, I'll let you off the hook one time. But what I'm going to have to say to you is, I wasn't joking. I absolutely mean it. And this cannot happen again. You can give them one chance. You can give them two chances, maybe even three if that's what you want. I personally am a big fan of 3 strikes and you're out. So I will give that, and I will tell them, hey, I'm serious. The way you're talking to me makes me feel very disrespected. Now, the common response from somebody who gets called on the mat from that, you guys, is that, well, I'm not responsible for what you're feeling. You're right. You're absolutely right. You are not responsible for what I'm feeling, but you are responsible for what you said. And then they're going to pop off with, well, I didn't mean it that way. Well, that's the way it was taken, and you really probably should think about the way that you deliver things in the future. That's the biggest part of don't back down. Do not let people turn it back on you and start gaslighting you into believing that you're the problem when they are the problem. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about setting healthy boundaries. As soon as I take a drink. So the first thing with setting healthy boundaries is a word that I probably need to introduce to all of you, because a lot of you have a lot of issues like I do. It's saying the word no. Introducing the word no into your vocabulary is key. For me, it is so uncomfortable and so abnormal that for me to use that word that I actually had to practice it because I was so uncomfortable not using it. Now, that's not where I am today, but it's definitely somewhere I have been. Saying no just did not come naturally to me. What came naturally to me was overextending myself for other people, not getting anything in return, and leaving my family wanting for time with me. That was what was normal for me. So my family was expected to understand that these strangers need me, but they have, but yet I didn't give enough time to my family. I was giving it all to strangers. In actuality, it should be the other way around. My family should get my time. My family should get my appreciation. That extra love that I have for people needs to go to my family, not to strangers. Okay? Does that make sense to anybody? So when you're setting your healthy boundaries, remember they're coming from a place of respect for yourself. Because the first person in this world that you need to respect is yourself. You cannot expect anyone else to respect you if you don't respect yourself. Okay? So you got to set them in from a place of respect for yourself, and explain that to people. Hey, I'm doing this because I respect myself, and I'm not willing to compromise the respect I have for myself because you and I communicate on a different level, or you and I have different ways of going about things. I'm not going to decrease my self-respect for you. That's not going to happen. And then the really important thing, after you decide that you're going to respect yourself more than you respect other people, which it actually has to happen. I know it sounds terrible the way I put it right there, but it has to happen, because you can't show respect to another human being if you don't respect yourself first. You have to learn how to respect and love yourself in order to love and respect another person. So you have to find your own identity. What kind of a person are you? When we're in a relationship, you'll find that a lot of us go from I and you right to we. We can't really do that if you don't have boundaries set. You can't, because you'll lose yourself in the we of the relationship, and when it ends, there's going to be no you left. You have to set those boundaries so that you can have yourself, protect yourself, and be there if it doesn't work out. Okay? So how do you do that? What do you do? From the get-go, you communicate. You have to be honest with people, and you have to tell them what you expect of them, or what you expect. This is what I expect out of myself. What are you bringing to the table? And be honest about it, because if you're not honest about what you expect and what you expect other people to bring to the table, you're never going to have, you're not going to have a solid type of relationship. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been married 21 years. I'm very blessed to be in the place that I am in right now. It is amazing marriage. It has not always been that way. We have struggled. We've had our hard times. We've had our difficult times. We've almost split up a few times, but we chose to be two imperfect people who won't give up on each other. And we've realized that we are imperfect people. So that's something you need to ask yourself when you're starting these relationships. Is this something that I can see myself being in for the long haul, and I want to set these boundaries? Or is this just kind of a, let's go out a few times and have some fun? Because there are going to be those types of relationships in your life. Okay, so the next one is a key point to maintaining your boundaries, okay? You have to refuse to take the blame. Refuse. And if it is not your fault, you do not take the blame of the action, because many people out there will manipulate your emotions to make it seem like there is something wrong with you, the way you feel. No, if you set your healthy boundaries and you say, hey, I don't accept this kind of talk. I don't want you talking to me in that way, because when you talk to me like that, it makes me feel like this, because they can't argue with the I feel statement, because they don't know how you feel. Okay. When you talk to me like that, it makes me feel like I'm not valued. It makes me feel like you think I am less than you. So those are the types of things, those are the type of statements you need to make. And do not back down, you guys. Do not back down. Because once you back down, and if you back down without a healthy, keyword, healthy discussion between you and that other person, they're going to see you as the weaker of the relationship, whether they mean to or not. They're going to see you as weaker, and they're not going to respect you the same way that they need to respect you. Okay? All right. So the other thing you need to do is you need to own your own feelings and emotions. If you cannot separate your feelings from the issue, then you need to take the time to be able to cool down, come back, and separate the two. Because when somebody says certain things to me, like when people yell, like, this is bullshit. When they yell that at me, I get really scared because of my past history of abuse and all of that. But when I separate it, I'm like, okay, I just need to calm down. I'm separate. I'm like, what did you mean by this is bullshit? He's like, this whole situation is bullshit. So you're not saying what I said was bullshit. You're saying the whole situation is. So do you see how that changes the entire tone of the conversation? So it wasn't me he was saying was bullshit. He said the whole situation was bullshit, which means we both had ownership in what went wrong with that situation. So it's important that you be able to look at things from a non-emotional point of view sometimes. Now, is that always possible? Absolutely not. It's not always possible. I've made my mistakes in that and just went full bore ahead from an emotional point of view, and it was not the best thing to have happen. But if you do that and you separate your emotions away from what the conversation is, the argument is, and you take the time to get yourself centered more, that whole gaslighting thing that we had mentioned earlier is not going to work on you, because you're going to be able to come back and you're going to be able to say, hey, I'm not emotional now. I'm going to look at this from a non-emotional point of view. And you're telling me that you did X, Y, and Z because I did ABC. That doesn't make any sense, because your XYZ is controlled by you and my ABC is controlled by me. So how you reacted is actually something that you're looking to blame on me, but is not truly my fault at all. And that is a huge, huge, huge portion of healthy boundaries. Because as you guys are mentioning, in a healthy marriage, you're going to be able to come back and say, now, wait a second, let's look at this, okay? I've been in an abusive marriage. I've been to the point where I've been gaslit by my ex-husband immensely. Everything was my fault. You know, he wouldn't have had to hit me if I hadn't talked back. That doesn't work, okay? You did what you did because you have an anger issue and you need to control it. I talked back or I yelled back at you because I was in a place where I was not being heard and I needed to be heard. So ownership needs to go both ways. You cannot set about saying, I own the whole problem. No, it is very rare that one person owns the entire problem. It is more likely that people there's a 50, 75, 25, whatever you want to call it, wherever you are the most comfortable. That is where the argument needs to be divided. Because like I always say to everybody, there are two sides to every story, okay? If I get one side, and then we do this as humans, we tend to say that we tend to tell a story and it's all the other person's fault, okay? That's the way we relay things, because we feel the need, we're telling the story, we feel the need to get our point across and how things happened to us and we were hurt by it. But if you go to the other person's side of the street, they're going to be telling it the same way. So it's hard to say absolutely 100% this is what happened. Nobody knows the whole story except for the two people that were involved in it. And therefore it is really important that if you look at those situations, that if you're friends with both parties, you got to kind of take a step back and go, okay, let's see how this all works out, because it probably isn't her way or his way or her way and her way or whatever. It's probably not one of those two at all. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And that's where you're going to find the truth lies. And that's why I tried to take that approach with everything. It's like, okay, let me see the situation. Let me figure out what I can about it. And I'm almost positive the truth is going to lay in the middle of those two situations, if that makes sense, of those two stories. The next thing that you need to do when you're talking about setting healthy boundaries, it's really hard. It is so hard, you guys. You need to be able to accept help. And those of us that are struggling to find ourselves or be in a place where we're comfortable being our true selves, it is so hard to realize that you might need help. You're like struggling so hard to be you and be on your own and be true to yourself. But you know what? Sometimes that's not possible without help. It just really isn't. But what is up to you? Okay. Sometimes you're just going to need the help. What's up to you is what areas in your life you're acceptable getting that help in. Maybe you're not comfortable, because I'm not comfortable asking for financial assistance. I'm not comfortable accepting financial help from anyone. Okay. But I am comfortable giving financial assistance to my kids or to people who just really need me. Somebody I've known in my life for a long time, and I'm like, you know what, you need to help up. Let me help you up, right? But the area that I'm willing to accept help in is I'm willing to listen to somebody and tell me, let me tell you the story. This is what happened. I'm clear from the anger. I'm going to tell you everything I can. And I want to hear somebody else's honest to God truth. I don't want to feel pain or rejected or disrespected by that advice. I want to hear somebody hear me and say, listen, some version of, I hear you. I hear you, and I can hear that you're frustrated, and I'm sorry that that happened to you. But what about, have you looked at it from this point of view? Or about this point of view? Just somebody who's willing to bring something in that I can think about. I'm very willing to accept that help, but I'm not willing to accept it from everyone. There are a few people in my life that I would accept that kind of help from. And that's a boundary I've set. That's not people who I will accept that from know who they are, because I've set that boundary free, and they're aware of it. They know that they can say just about anything to me. Now, the next part of putting, healthy boundaries is asking for space. It's straight up. We've talked about a little bit here before. You have the right to ask for space to get your shit together, get your mind rolling correctly, getting your emotions under control. You absolutely 100% can ask for that space. Okay? You also, somebody says something to you and it hurts you. You need to walk away and you tell them, listen, I need to be done with this conversation for a little while. And when I use that, it's usually I have tears running down my face, the whole nine. I'm like, listen, I just need you to let me feel my feelings, and I will get back to you in a little bit. Because those feelings are taking over my entire being, and I need to just feel them so that I can continue on with what we were talking about. I need to be able to feel those feelings. And it is important to realize, you guys, that feeling your feelings is not the same thing as pushing somebody away. It absolutely is not. Anybody who tells you, when you say, I need some space, they're like, oh, there you go again, pushing me away. No, I'm not pushing you away. I'm asking for a timeout, and I'm asking to be able to go and feel my feelings and then come back to you in a more, less emotional state of mind. There's a big difference. And the one thing that I have found with this whole number 7 here is that people whose agenda is to gaslight you, and whether they've said it or they do it non-purposefully or whatever, I don't understand that at all, but they will not want you to feel your feelings. They will not let you have that space. They'll continue to follow you and engage in you until they have beaten you down so hard that you have no choice but to either come up swinging or just dissolve on the floor and just plug your ears and hope to God they'll shut the fuck up. Okay? And that kind of stuff absolutely breeds resentment, hate, bad feelings, worthlessness. So this number 7 step to me is one of the most important stages of setting healthy boundaries that we can look at. Because if you don't feel your feelings and you stuff them, what I can guarantee you is going to happen is that you're going to have an explosion. And it may not be at the person it needs to be, or it may be at the person it needs to be, but you're going to be exploding 6 months worth of crap over them asking you to pass the salt. That's usually what happens. It just becomes a volcano. So it's not safe to push all that stuff down. Not to mention, it leads to high blood pressure, anxiety, depression, a whole host of other physical and mental disorders that you don't need to have to deal with. And if you're with a person who will not give you that space, something has to change. Either they need to realize that they need to value what you're saying more, or maybe it's time to get out. You know, I've been in that situation with my husband, my current husband, where he used to follow me around, and I finally turned on him one day. I'm like, I wish you would just fucking leave me alone. Don't follow me. And after that statement, we went to marriage counseling. He realized, oh, he was trying to get the last word in because that's what he did. He has to have the last word. And I know this about him. I don't have to have, well, that's a lie. I'd like to have the last word, but sometimes it's just like, please leave me alone. You know, I need space to breathe. Because you all know what I'm talking about. When you get into an argument, it gets so intense, you just feel like you can't fucking breathe. And that's what I needed. I needed that space. And that's what you're asking for. You're asking for the space to feel what you need to feel and to get yourself in a place where you feel more comfortable continuing the conversation. So the next thing is communication. We've talked about that. Communication. However, you have to be willing to allow the person the space they need to be able to gather themselves so that they can communicate in an effective manner. So if I was to say to my husband, listen, I need to go feel my feels, whatever. But if I say to him listen, at this point, you're just screaming at me. This conversation is not going anywhere. I cannot talk to you until you get yourself under control. Those might be fighting words. Because I said, you need to get yourself under control. Okay? If I turn it around and say, honey, I can't take it anymore. The screaming and the yelling is making me feel like I'm in a place where I am threatened and we are not communicating well at all. I really think we need to take a time out, take a few minutes and gather ourselves and maybe come back. Remember that we might love each other or like each other at that point. And come back and talk about this at a different point. That is much better than saying you, because I came from a place of I need for you to hear what I'm saying, and I need you to understand that I think this is not going anywhere. But I didn't point the finger at him. I said we, so we can get this resolved. The other thing with communication is that you absolutely have to get used to articulating what makes you uncomfortable. Because in order to set boundaries, you have to be able to tell the people in your lives that you cannot, I'm not going to deal with it. I'm not. But we need to put it in such a way that we are saying to them, I cannot have you, when you speak to me like that, I feel this. I feel disrespected. I feel undervalued. And I feel like you don't love me. Those are my feelings. You can't argue with my feelings. Okay? So you put yourself in the position where you're like, you know, when you tell me one thing, say, yeah, babe, let's go out to dinner on Friday night. Excellent. I'm going to look forward to going to dinner on Friday night. Then you tell me Friday night, and I say, hey, are we going out to dinner? You're like, oh, I forgot. I got busy with the boys. My response is going to be to you, okay, when you do that, when you forget about me because you got busy with the boys, it makes me feel like I'm less important than your friends are. It makes me feel like spending time with me is not something that you value or even hold in high priority. And that is something that is important. That's important to me. So you have to say those things in a certain way so that your partner will receive them. And you have to get comfortable with articulating what you're uncomfortable with. Because the only way to start setting boundaries is to communicate what you're uncomfortable with. And it's not an easy conversation. And I'm not trying to make any of this sound like it is easy at all, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work between you and anybody that you're in a relationship with, because you have to sit down and think and really outline, at least I do. I have to outline what I want to say, otherwise I'll forget something. You have to do that. You have to do that for yourself, because I value myself much more than I did 20 years ago. I value myself actually more than I did probably 10 years ago, because I know that I'm an awesome person. I know that I'm a loving, caring person, and I deserve to be treated as such. And that's when it was easy for me to finally put down boundaries and be healthy about those boundaries. Okay, so the next step is something, and it's probably for me, it's a really rather, it's kind of a sticky situation for me, because I oftentimes find myself saying, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to share this. And I expect my partner to share back with me. Well, maybe my partner doesn't feel like sharing with me. So the next step is that you have to realize that sharing and setting boundaries goes both ways. Okay? Your partner may have boundaries or that are, somewhere around yours, and you guys got to work it out together, but sharing is absolutely mutual. Okay? You should not be the only one, and you need to realize you're not the only one that has to be vulnerable in these types of situations. Okay, because vulnerability is scary. It is so scary, you guys, and it's not a place that I particularly care to be at all. I get so sick and so just so anxious, and just try to avoid it if I feel vulnerable. Yes, and it is boundaries today. We're talking about healthy boundaries. So you have to be willing to share and be willing to put your vulnerability out there, but you also have to understand that when your partner is ready, they need the same respect that you demanded of them from you. And the last one, oh boy, not the last one, I'm sorry. I lost my place. Okay, back to what we were saying, talk about being vulnerable. You share on your own terms. Okay, remember, everybody shares on your own terms. They are, you're not forced to share anything you don't want to share, and your partner shouldn't be forced to share anything that they don't want to share. So you really do, you share on your own terms, you're vulnerable on your own terms. But that means that we can't expect, you have to remember, you guys, you cannot expect something out of your partner that you, just because you did it, your partner doesn't have to do it. You have to be really mindful of that, because for me especially, I absolutely will be like, well, I shared, why can't you share? And he's like, I don't want to share. I don't feel like sharing. That's not something I want to do today. Well, okay, I have to respect that. He put a boundary down for me, and I have to absolutely respect that. Okay, so the last thing that you need to do when you're talking about setting up boundaries, oh God, this one sucks so bad. Oh, I'm so bad at it, is you have to stand up for yourself. You absolutely 100% have to stand up for yourself, and you have to establish what you will and will not accept in the way that people speak or deal with you. Now, the starting of healthy boundaries is to stop with the way that people talk to you. Because if you stop people from talking to you in a certain manner, they're going to realize it's not acceptable to treat you in that manner. Because you have to really realize that you don't have to accept the way people say things to you. You do not. You absolutely can say, hey, wow, I'm really not comfortable with the way you're communicating with me right now. It makes me feel like you are not taking me seriously. And it also makes me feel like you don't value me, because, you wouldn't be making those types of jokes if you valued my friendship. And of course, that person's probably gonna come back with, well, it was just a joke. Okay, that's fine. It was a joke for you, but I found it offensive. So please, in the future, don't joke about those kind of things with me. So you see how we never actually pointed the finger, which what I'd really want to say is, listen, it's not appropriate for you to make queer jokes, because I have queer friends and I love my queer friends. So how dare you freaking degrade them like that or talk like that to them, about them? Do you see the difference in how I'm presenting that? What I really wanted to say is be angry, and I want to stand up for my friends. But my coming across angry is not going to stop their behavior. In fact, it's going to have them talking about me and saying, oh, she's off her rocker. She's crazy because of the way that I responded. Now, in saying I have healthy boundaries, hey, I'm not comfortable with it. I don't want you making those kind of jokes in front of me. I really appreciate you respecting my boundaries. Did I state my boundaries? Yes. Are they going to think twice before they make those kind of jokes in front of me? I would freaking hope so. I can't guarantee anything, but I would hope so. And I stood for my friends. I stood for my friends, and I didn't let the queer joke go unchecked. And that is important. It is so important, you guys, because like I said, I am terrible of standing up for myself. I will more times than not back down to my own detriment and let other people walk over me. And that is not acceptable. It absolutely is not acceptable. And those of you who've gotten to know me over the past 6 months are probably laughing, going, oh my God, Deborah, back down. Yeah, Deborah I get scared. I know I'm mouthy and I know I'm spicy, but when it comes to standing up for myself, I was so told for so many years that I was not worth it. You know, my dad's favoring my brothers over me taught me that girls are not worth it. Girls are useless. Being in an abusive relationship with my ex-husband, my first husband, taught me that girls are not worth it. Girls are useless. They wouldn't be beating me if I wasn't so stupid. Those are the things that I was taught. So for me as a 52-year-old female to come on here and tell you this is how you need to go about setting your boundaries, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, I have walked this road. I have set these boundaries. I have healthy boundaries with my husband. And it's unfortunate that recently a friend of mine, and all of you probably know who I'm talking about, crossed a boundary that I set. And it was the very last boundary because I let a couple things go that I shouldn't have. But that last boundary, it wasn't going anywhere. And he did it, and I was done. I was absolutely done. And we had to have the police involved and everything like that. But I set that boundary. And I was so proud of myself for standing up to it because that was something I swore to myself when I got out of my abusive marriage that I would never, ever, ever go back into. I would never, ever let any man put his hands on me again. And when they did, I was like, no, we're done. We're absolutely effing done. Now, you know, I'm still super overprotective of my husband and my son who want to cause physical harm to this person because they did put their hands on me. But I don't want to have to bail my husband and my son out of jail. And them telling me, well, you give me the word, mom, or you give me the word, honey, and I'll go beat that person's butt, or it is enough for me to know that I'm loved. I don't need them to actually carry through with it because I don't want them to get in trouble. And I think that that's actually something that individual is looking to have done, having that done. So they have a way to get back at me and say, well, you know, you did this. Now I'm going to do this to your loved ones. So it's not something that I'm ready to engage with, you know, but I did accept my boundaries. And that is so important, you guys. And I think the first step that I started to do to make healthy boundaries is that even under the promise of violence and towards me, towards my family, whatever it was, I went and got a restraining order against my first husband. And even under the threat of, you can't keep my daughter from you, I will kill you, I kept my little girl from him because he was not a proper parent. And she's grateful that I gave her a proper father when I remarried. And she calls my current husband dad. She doesn't have anything to do with her biological father. And that was my first step where I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm standing up for myself, and I'm not taking any more of this crap that people are dishing out at me. Now, what do, you guys? Like for me, like I have a 31-year-old daughter, and she walks like me, talks like me, gestures like me, the whole nine. But we don't see eye to eye. We don't. And I had to she put a boundary down, and I respect her boundary now. I put a boundary down, and she was like, huh? My mom has a boundary? Yeah, your mom has a boundary because I can't get my feelings hurt constantly. So it is a two-way street. And that's super important to remember is like, if you feel the need to put down boundaries with someone, there's obviously something going on in that relationship that is not working for you, whether it be a coworker, whether it be a a friend, a lover, whatever the case may be. For example, you have a coworker who is always constantly 10 to 15 minutes late for their shift. Well, I went to them and said, and this happened to me, I'm like, listen, I have something I have to do. I have to be somewhere by 7:30 in the morning. You cannot stroll in here at 7:15 and expect a report. I've got to be somewhere at 7:30. This is not working for me. And I did it 2 or 3 times, and she just would not get there on time. And but at that point I said, okay, listen, this is the last time I'm going to talk to you about it. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go to management. And when I went to management, and management's like, hey, they wrote her up. She was angry. She's like, why didn't you come talk to me? I did on 4 separate occasions, and you blew me off like it was nothing. What exactly did you expect me to do? Oh, I expect you to be more lenient. No, I have a life. Okay. My life is just as important to me as your life is to you. So if you can't get your stuff done and get into work by 7 a.m., that is not my problem. But do you see what I'm talking about, you guys, when we're talking about having those boundaries, that you have to protect yourself. You have to make sure that you are valued in the relationship no matter what it is. Okay. And a lot of you, I know, like student Dr. Ben and myself, and actually quite a few other ones, is that we're in medicine. And so I was in medicine, and I was expected to give, and take care of people. But then management didn't take care of me back. So then when I got into management, I was like, listen, so-and-so, I know you've been having a really hard time because this person is on hospice. How are you doing? And if it was just me coming down and saying, hey, how are you doing? Do you need an extra break? Let me sit with them while I give you a little bit of an extra break to go do what you need to do. Here, let me give you go buy you lunch today, because you need to feel like you need to feel like somebody is caring for you as much as you are caring for that person. And that's absolutely 100% the truth, because you cannot empty your tank day after day after day for people and not get anything in return and still be expected to be the person that you are. So by setting boundaries in all relationships, we start to understand that we are able to still care for people, and that makes you happy, or still be in these relationships with people, but you still are looking out for number one. And I know that sounds selfish, but it's not selfish when we're talking about setting boundaries. What it is a loving thing to do for yourself. Because if you go back to the beginning of this podcast, I said in the very beginning, if you do not take care of yourself, or you do not love yourself, or you do not respect yourself, how can you expect anyone else to do those things for you? And if there's somebody in your life that's telling you, oh, no, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she would understand if she was in the relationship with me. No, I fucking wouldn't. Because I've been in relationships like that with people, and I've been made to feel useless and just beaten down. And I'm here today to tell you, never effing again. Never effing again. And if there's anybody out there that feels that way, listen to this podcast over and over again until you have the strength, or call me till you have the strength to be able to say, hey, I deserve better. I deserve better out of me. Because if nobody else is if you feel like nobody else is loving you, then you need to start loving yourself more. Because loving yourself puts out this great light, and it puts out this good vibe, whatever you want to call it. It just makes you so much happier. And the happier you are with yourself and your situation, the more you're going to actually attract more people to you. Now, yeah. Some of you are probably going, oh, for Christ's sakes, Deborah, that's not scientifically proven. I'm just saying that if you're miserable all the time and you don't love yourself, you walk around with a sad face, you're grumpy, you're short with people, all of that. You love yourself and you smile more, and you take the time to maybe say, hey, how you doing today? Those people are going to come back and go, you know what? I'm doing okay. How are you, Mama Deb? How are you doing today? So you really have to take care of yourself if you want to be in a place where you can where you can affect change in the world, in my opinion, because I change the world my corner at a time. I do. I make sure I stop into the corner store every day and I ask everybody, how are you doing? How was your weekend? How are you doing? I know more about their personal lives than they're probably comfortable me knowing, but I have one of those faces where people tell me their problems all the time, and I sit and I listen and I give them, validation because I'm listening. I'm another human being who's listening. But I'm not super good at sharing that kind of stuff with other people because, like, there are very few friends that I would share if I was having a horrible day and I was dealing with you guys know, you're in my circle. When I was dealing with a horrible depressive period like a few days ago, y'all knew. I didn't have to tell you. You're like, are you okay? I got so many people going, are you okay, Deb? I know what you're going through is really tough. Is there anything we can do for you? That right there, that tells you that I'm putting good stuff out. Because those people, I care about those people so much, and in turn, they care for me, and they accept my boundaries, and they know if I go radio silent, it means something's going on, and they just check on me. And that's really what healthy boundaries are about, you guys, is that when you get those people in your life that you really want there, and you set those healthy boundaries, and you start taking care of yourself, because we all know the number one thing to do when you have a mental health problem is that you need self-care. Well, setting healthy boundaries and respecting yourself and loving yourself, that's self-care, y'all. That is absolutely self-care. Oh goodness, I've been talking y'all's ear off for a long time. There's a lot to say on this discussion. I do want to remind you guys that we have an open panel after the stream. You just let my lovely producer Beck or myself know if you want to join in. I would love to sit and chat with you all about anything and everything because you guys are such a great group of people. So I am going to, is there any questions or comments that we should talk about? I don't see any that are starred, so I'm thinking there's not. But I also want to remind you guys that next week I am having my first guest. HR is joining me. And we're going to be talking about the stigmas attached with mental health. We all have heard them. We've all heard them. We've all been called them. But we're going to talk about how to deal with those and really how to take power away from the stigma and how to be, well, for me, what I like to do is I like to be push forward and make mental health a common day topic, because that's what we need to do for each other. Is we need to be here and make sure that everybody understands that, if there's nothing wrong with us just because we have a mental health disorder. They just have to deal with things a little bit differently. All right. So on that note, I believe that the saying I end with is that the beginning of wisdom is getting to know yourself. I think I got that one right. So I want you guys to remember that getting to know yourself and setting your healthy boundaries is the beginning of all wisdom. Absolutely. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please contact me any way you can. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Twitch, I'm on Discord, I'm on Facebook, and I'm also have the YouTube channel. So any way you can get a hold of me, please do it. And I'm willing to discuss any type of topic. You got some ideas for me? You want something talked about? I am happy to do it. All right, y'all. Take care of yourselves. Be kind to yourself. And always remember, you're perfect just the way you are.